Good evening. Welcome to our Fireside Chat. My name is Jonathan Blanchard and my wife Deanna is here, and this is our last Fireside Chat for the summer. So we hope you will be well for the rest of the summer. And it's been a delight to do this for you that are watching out there, whoever you are. And so we pray you've been blessed by it. And perhaps in September we might get back to it. But we will be taking a little bit of a break for the summertime. And we hope that you'll take time to have some refreshment and relaxation. So this is the last one for a little bit, and we are doing God's faithfulness. And so there's a reading from Romans 4:16 to 25, and it's the New Living Translation. So I will read that. So the promise is received by faith. It is given as a free gift. And we are all certain to receive it, whether or not we live according to the law of Moses, if we have faith like Abraham's. For Abraham is the father of all who believe. That is what the scriptures mean when God told him, I have made you the father of many nations. This happened because Abraham believed in the God who brings the dead back to life and who creates new things out of nothing. Even when there was no reason for hope, Abraham kept hoping, believing that he would become the father of many nations. For God had said to him, that's how many descendants you will have. And Abraham's faith did not weaken, even though at about 100 years of age, he figured his body was as good as dead, and so was Sarah's womb. Abraham never wavered in believing God's promise. In fact, his faith grew stronger, and in this he brought glory to God. He was fully convinced that God is able to do whatever he promises, and because of Abraham's faith, God counted him as righteous. And when God counted him as righteous, it wasn't just for Abraham's benefit, it was recorded for our benefit too, assuring us that God will also count us as righteous if we believe in him, the one who raised Jesus, our Lord, from the dead. He was handed over to die because of our sins, and he was raised to life to make us right with God. Word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
So, it's my turn to ask questions, and we will begin with, how would you define faithfulness?
Well, whenever I'm asked to define something, I immediately go to the dictionary to get a starting point. So I'll just read Merriam-Webster's definition, and it's interesting. It's got a few different definitions there. So number one is steadfast in affection or allegiance, and the word they highlight there is loyal. Number two, firm in adherence to promises or in observance of duty, and the word that's highlighted is conscientious. And number three, given with strong assurance or a faithful promise, and that word is binding. And then number four, true to the facts, to a standard or to an original. And number five, they say it's obsolete, which is full of faith, which is kind of interesting, I think. But anyway, that's Merriam-Webster's definition. But my definition, I think I definitely, see all of those things: loyal, conscientious. Your word is your bond, so to speak, right? I think for me, faithfulness speaks of trustworthiness, constancy, and truth. And there's a steadiness to that word. When I think of the word faithful or faithfulness, there's a steadiness. And I think of God who is steady and reliable and dependable. And I love, it talked about that in that video that we watched as well, but the image of God as a rock. I really love that solid rock. On Christ, the solid rock I stand. There's hymns and stuff. And a verse that I love that talks about God as a rock is found in Exodus 33, verse 22. And it's God talking to Moses. As my glorious presence passes by, I will hide you in the crevice of the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. So I love that image of God's faithfulness, his care, his protection, his just steadiness and that safety that's there. And I also think of that old saying, say what you mean what you say, do what you said you would do, right? So again, those are things that I think of when I think of faithful. And God always does what he says he will do. But it's interesting because Pastor Joel Schmidgall says, faithfulness is not a promise of prosperity. Faithfulness is the promise of consistency. So he's not faithful to our comfort or to our liking or to what we prefer or wish or all those things. He's faithful to his word. So that's what I think of when I think of defining faithfulness.
Well, the image that comes to mind for me is Old Faithful,
Ah.
the geyser.
Nice.
And so it's remarkable that over decades and centuries, in fact, that this geyser goes off at the same time, just like clockwork. And so in a sense, God is faithful in such a way that when expected, God is there. And God can also catch us unexpected, but the very fact that you can count on God. And so I find that's a big part of faithfulness. And I think the obsolete fact of it is actually probably very accurate as being faithful. So what's remarkable about God is that God has faith in us. And so small f, God doesn't need to worship us, but God believes that we can be good and that we can be children, we can be counted as children. And so with God's faithfulness in that sense, God doesn't give up on us. And so the reverse side of it is that we shouldn't give up on God. And so that is something that Abraham discovered. He was Abram, and he became Abraham because he just kept believing that God would do what was expected. And so there were moments, of course, where they weren't too sure about it. And I like the fact that Sarah, who was Sarai at the time, she laughed about the promise. And of course, the child that is born is called Isaac, and Isaac is one who makes me laugh. So that's just a marvelous indication of God's faithfulness, where, as you said, it just finds a way. And it's just incredible that when a promise is given by God, it will happen. Yes. And just like that old faithful geyser, you can count on it, and you can count on God's word and the character of God just being there at the moment, the precise moment that is needed. And of course, with that promise was the Savior of the world. And it took a long time, but in God's estimation, it was just the right time. Exactly. And those that never gave up, they saw the faithfulness. So, yes. Now the next question: why do you think it's so hard to remember God's faithfulness and to trust Him during difficult times?
I think as humans, we're easily distracted. I think we focus on the wrong things, and I kind of think of that movie Up with the golden retriever who's called Doug. We kind of jokingly call our golden retriever Doug sometimes. And he's easily distracted. His gaze is taken off, squirrels in particular. So it's a squirrel. And I think as humans we're like that, right? We take our eyes off of God. We focus on our own situations, our own struggles, our own frustrations, and we take our eyes off of God's promise. So I think when we do that, it's hard to see His faithfulness. It's hard to remember that He is faithful when our eyes, when our focus, when our heart, when our attention is on the wrong things. And I think that's something that as human beings we struggle with a lot. So.
Yeah, and further to that point, it's easier for us to see the glass half empty than half full. Yeah. So when we're in a situation, and Abraham was in the same way. He considered himself close to death. He didn't see any possibility of Sarai getting pregnant, and so in that moment he saw things as the glass half empty instead of half full. So just by the very fact that they were existing, it made it possible. And so God made a way for that to happen. And we forget about that. We forget that with God, anything is possible. And we just sometimes shove that aside. And so it's very important for us to realize this, especially in the difficult times. It may be easier to say, oh yes, God is faithful to me in the good times, but in the rough times, we wonder about God's timing or God's availability. Maybe God has more important matters to attend to. I don't know how many times I've heard that when people have said, well, God has bigger fish to fry, or there's more going on that God needs to pay attention to than just me. And God is not Doug. God does not get distracted by things, and God is keenly focused on each person's life and the immediate moment that they're in. And so that we can be assured of, and we just have to stop just selling God short and just thinking that, well, this is too much for God, or it's too insignificant for God. And so that is something we have to stop and check ourselves with. It really got God angry and displeased when the Israelites kept doing that after the Exodus. And God was faithful up till now. And then, of course, the famous adage about, what have you done for me lately? And I think that is just such a commentary on our human attitudes, is that we just look at this next moment and say, well, God might have been there before, but I'm not so sure now. That's just not the way God operates. God is always the same, yesterday, today, and forever, and will always be faithful. Okay, so our third question then is, how does the story of Abraham encourage your faith in God?
Well, I think that story is a pretty amazing story. The whole, the whole passage we read was kind of from the New Testament, remembering Abraham's faith. But I think, so that talks about how Abraham believed, right? He had faith. He encourages me. His story encourages me to believe that God can do the impossible, that he can do things that are seemingly too hard, or that he can make a way where there seems to be no way. And I can trust God's guidance and direction in leading me. Abraham was led into uncharted territory, into a place he didn't know, but he followed and he obeyed. So I can learn from that and trust God to lead me. And I can learn to demonstrate my faith by being obedient to God. Abraham was obedient in his calling. So those are ways I can learn from Abraham. But the thing I think that I'm encouraged by also is that Abraham was human. He was flawed. He was imperfect. He made mistakes. And his faith wasn't this automatic, he was born with it, and he was unwavering in his faith right from day one. I mean, there are wonderful, real stories about him showing his lack of faith, and then he grew from that, and his faith grew as he learned and as he went through trials. I think of the story, well, like you were talking about, when they were told they were going to have a child, and that he was going to be the father of many nations, and that was a little bit hard to believe at their age, right? But also the story of Abraham referring to his wife as his sister. Mm-hmm. So when I think it was King Abimelech, he told him that Sarai was his sister. Sarai was beautiful. She was so beautiful, and Abraham was afraid that the Egyptians would take her and kill him. And so out of fear for his life and lack of faith in God, he figured, I'm going to solve this by calling her my sister, and then they'll they'll be okay with me. She'll just, So it wasn't a highlight or a positive moment in Abraham's life, but it gives me encouragement in that even when I make mistakes, I can trust that I'm learning and that I'm growing, that God's going to use that, and my faith can grow. And, in the end, Abraham had tremendous faith, and his faith was credited to him as righteousness. And so that I find very encouraging about the story of Abraham.
Mm-hmm. Well, and as Paul said, that his faith in God made him right with God, and there's a real connection there, that when we put our full trust in God, we can be right with God. And so it's almost like a childlike relationship, where when a child is so secure in the parent and is so trusting of the parent, that it just makes the bond that much better. And of course, we know the difference when there's the dysfunction in the family. And so if that happens, then you get estranged relationships. It's remarkable again with the prodigal son. That's another example where the son wants all his inheritance before the father dies, probably thinking that he's not going to get as much when his dad dies than when he's still alive. So he takes the inheritance before the death of his father, and that is just a real slap in the face. It's not showing faith in the father to provide for both his sons, and so it just showed a lack of faith. And yet the father was faithful. And so what I think a lot of the stories of the Bible talk about is that it just is better to have faith in God, and it just makes it right. It makes you right with God, and that's what it's all about. It's not about perfection in this life. We can't attain perfection, but we can be righteous. We can be right with God by putting all our trust in God because of God's faithfulness.
Exactly.
And that is the story of Abram and Abraham. He had many options to begin with. He had to leave from Ur of the Chaldees, and then he had to go through a Gentile kingdom, and of course with Abimelech, and he didn't quite make it on that one. He tried to fluff it off, and it was Abimelech that said, you've done something terrible. You've allowed me to take your wife to be with me. And so it's remarkable that a Gentile came to see that God's faithfulness was shining through. And so that's just something we have to learn, and that is something that comes just brilliantly through the story of Abraham.
Absolutely.
So we continue now with how have you personally seen God's faithfulness in your life?
Oh my goodness, there's so many stories I could tell, right? I mean, God has been so faithful. I think of his constant presence with me. I think of the people he surrounded me with, the testimonies of other believers that encourage me, all those kinds of things, and even the little graces he's shown. And I may have told this story here in this format before or not, I don't know for sure, but you've heard it many times, but it's the story of the bathtub.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, when we were living in Winnipeg, the bathtub in our house was not that great of a bathtub. It was kind of old and rough and not a pleasant bathtub. And I remembered, I just never had baths, but I remember coming here for your interview, and we stayed in a hotel, and I had a bath that afternoon. I thought, oh, this is so nice. It's such a nice bathtub. It would be so nice to have a bathtub like this. And such a silly little thing. And we came to look at the rectory, and upstairs in the bathroom was the exact same bathtub as the hotel. And it was just this little thing. It's so insignificant in the big picture, and it's such a trivial, frivolous little thing. But I felt at that moment that God saw me, and something that was just, it was hard to move. We left our daughter and son-in-law behind in Winnipeg and your family, and it was hard to pick up and go and be obedient, and that, you know, there were losses in that, but we knew that God had called us here. And this was a little reminder that God said, I see you, I love you, I'm caring for you, and I'm faithful. And so that, to me, is one of the reminders that, you know, for so many people, it may seem like such a silly little thing, but it was just this moment that it just came clear to me. God sees all of my needs, even the silly little bathtub needs that I have. So that's one of my favorite examples of that. And the other thing I wanted to share is when I think of God's faithfulness, I'm reminded of a hymn that has become kind of a theme song for me. So when I think about personally seeing God's faithfulness in my life, this hymn always comes to my mind, and I think many of you know this hymn very well. It's Great is Thy Faithfulness. Great is Thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with Thee. Thou changest not, Thy compassions they fail not. As Thou hast been, Thou forever wilt be. Great is Thy faithfulness, great is Thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, Thy hand hath provided. Great is Thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. And what jumps to my mind is the moment when I thought I was going to be accepted as the incumbent in Selkirk at a church in Selkirk, and I had a wonderful tour of Selkirk, Manitoba, a beautiful little city there, and so it looked like I would be getting that position, and the wardens were even phoned about it. It was really remarkable. And yet, not quite. I finished second in the... and that's okay. At the time, it felt devastating because I really felt it was the right spot, the right time, close to where my parents and family are in Winnipeg. And so it just felt right at the moment, but it wasn't to be. And so it was heartbreaking in a sense. I really thought that was the way that God was leading. And then I get this invitation to apply to a place, St. Mark's Ocean Park. A shout out to all you folks if you're watching there. I still love you guys a lot, and the great people of St. Mark, yes. So that's something I learned from, and it was amazing because the first time I received their profile, I have to confess I ditched it. I really didn't think God was leading us there. It was just so much further away, and it just didn't seem the right timing. And so I got this little call up again from someone in the at St. Mark's, and I won't mention your name, but you know who you are if you're watching this. I'll call you JR. You might be able to figure that one out. But yeah, so JR sends me the second time the profile, and followed that up with a phone call because he knew my parents, and he said, I really think Jonathan should apply to this parish. And so I prayed about it. I really wasn't too certain about it, and I committed it to God. And then lo and behold, I was selected to be the assistant and associate, those kind of positions there at St. Mark's. And so it was really wonderful in the end. And God was faithful in providing me a place to do ministry for 5.5 years, and got to know some really marvelous people out there. It was really a treat to be there for those years. We never would have been able to live in BC otherwise. We just didn't have the funds, and so they even provided a fundraiser called Wheels Across Canada, so that was really imaginative, so well done for the people of St. Mark's out there. And I pray God is still blessing you in your ministry there. And so it was just a real surprise. It was a curveball that I just didn't expect to not be accepted at Selkirk, and then asked to apply to St. Mark's way out in on the west coast there. So it was just so unusual, and yet God was faithful. He provided for our family. We had everything we needed there. We made some good friends, had some amazing times there. So that's God's faithfulness. Yeah. When I was devastated, God opened the door, and so it's if he closes a window, he opens a door. If he closes a door, opens a window. And that's what happened in that situation. And I just very thankful to God for that. So, all right, now we have our fifth question. And first of all, we have a little background to give. In Joshua chapter 4, verses 4 through 7, Joshua tells the 12 men representing each tribe of Israel to pick up a stone from the Jordan River and build a memorial to be a permanent reminder to the people of God's faithfulness. So, what are some of the memorials you have placed in your life to remind you of God's faithfulness?
Well, I think of intangible things like memories. First of all, I think of memories of people, memories of experiences, memories of places, and for that one I think in particular of a memory when I was 19 years old, and I have a very clear memory of sitting on a rock at a lake at a camp in Manitoba, asking God for direction for my life, and I have a very clear memory of feeling very near to Him at that time. And of really sensing His presence and His direction, and just having a real sense of peace about the decisions, some big decisions I needed to make. One of them had to do with you, and but it was just an amazing that memory is so clear in my mind, and I call that to mind often when I'm at a place of making decisions in my life, and how faithful He was in that. So that's a touch point for me of a reminder. God was faithful. He heard me, He led me, and He directed my life very clearly in that time. So that memory is a touch point for me to remember God's faithfulness. And I think those memorials are also meant to be signposts to our children and to the community around us. So I think sharing those things and hearing testimony of God's faithfulness is really important to speak of that to future generations. But when I think of something tangible, like this story of Joshua is very tangible. They picked up the stones and built a physical memorial that people could touch, they could look at, they could see. It was there for generations to come. And that physical thing was a reminder. And one thing I think of for me is we have some pictures in our bedroom, and above our bed, behind our bed, is 3 pictures of horses running. So it's a series of 3 pictures that kind of make one big scene, and it's kind of an impressionist style of picture of these horses running. And the image reminds me, it makes me think of me running the race that is set before me. So every time I look at that, I think of how faithful God is and how He has been throughout this race of life that I've been running. And it also reminds me of the scripture from Jeremiah 12:5. If racing against mere men makes you tired, how will you race against horses? So it reminds me to be growing in my faithfulness, to be striving to learn more and grow and become closer to God, so I'm equipped to do the work that He's called me to do. There's so many things that, exhaust you and make you tired. And then, God can call us to things that are even bigger. And if we don't rely on Him and we don't trust Him, we don't know His word, how are we going to do that? So that reminds me of that scripture every time I look at that. And on the other side of our bedroom, kind of at the foot of our bed, we have another picture that says, "Be still." And that contrast to me is really, the tension and the contrast between those two is really important, I think, to find balance between rest and work, and to trust God with all of it. So though that area for me, like those two images for me, are a real memorial to trust God, to learn and grow and do the work that He has set before me, but to trust Him and rest in Him too. So.
Well, if you're talking about physical, tangible memory stones, as I call them, one that leaps to mind for me is the one that was painted for us by, I'll say, MH in Iroquois Falls. Very far away from St. Mark's in Ocean Park. Iroquois Falls, St. Mark's in Iroquois Falls was just a special time in our lives. And good old MH, she painted this rock, and I'll have to tell you right now, it's still around. We still have it. I've been carrying it from place to place that we've been moving to, and I still have a fond affection for it. I have it in a prominent place in the garden, and it's still as beautiful as ever. So that is a real touch point in that it's an actual stone, but it reminds me of the person that painted it, and it reminds me of the time that we were in Iroquois Falls, which was another amazing time we had. And so we got to know a lot of different people there. And so I know that one of the things that in my private conversations with God, I remember Him sort of almost chuckling and saying that, well, you know, you've been having these experiences at these different places because I want you to get to know more of the family that you're going to be part of. And so He's saying, you're just getting to know the wider family, and I'm just getting you introduced to all these family members. So I thought that was very humorous of God to do that. You know, I think that there's sometimes a little bit of overload in how many family members I've come to see as brothers and sisters. So, yeah, I think I've seen enough of them now. It's, I'd like to be able to just stay in one place for quite some time. So, but it was very important. And then on top of that, we also were given gifts from each place. And so we got a beautiful wall clock from Matheson and Iroquois Falls. We had paintings. St. Mark's Ocean Park gave us a painting of their beautiful parish building, the worship building. And we got plates. I don't know if any of you folks out there, if you're part of an Anglican parish, usually they have a collectible plate that is imprinted with the picture of the church. And so we have many of those plates that have come with us. And so those are all kind of touch points. And every time I look at a plate, or I look at the stone that was painted, or a painting of one of the church parish buildings, I just am thankful for God's faithfulness in all of that. The moves, the tearing from one place and planting in another. It's as a gardener, I kind of appreciate how plants feel when they're ripped from the soil and their roots are dangling, and I kind of feel like, oh, my roots have just been ripped up again. And but
God is the
gardener.
For them to grow and thrive, right?
God is a gardener. It's just amazing. There's been moments where, as a gardener, I've seen something that it maybe looks like it's forgotten, and so I just dig it up, and if the plant had feelings, it would probably say, ouch, that hurt. And what are you doing to me? But then it's kind of neat. As a gardener, I dig it up and put it in a spot that it would enjoy, and it just flourishes. And so I think that's what God does in our lives all the time. Digs us up sometimes, takes us, rips us, our roots get a little bit hurt, and bruised, but boy, it just is for our benefit.
Yeah.
And God never kills us by doing it.
Nope.
So I was taught by my grandparents that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And so I would be very much in agreement to that. As far as the horses go, not so much. I'm not a horse fan. I've had bad experience with horses. They don't like me.
Oh.
So there you have it. All right, our last question. In what ways has this studies series on God's character stretched your understanding of who He is?
I've just loved this study. I think learning those Hebrew words for each of those characteristics of God has been a really neat way to understand it in a deeper way. I wanted to read that verse again just to kind of take us back to the where this whole study started, right? The kind of focus of it. And that's from Exodus 34:6. So this is what we've been studying this whole time. The Lord passed by before him and proclaimed, the Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger and abounding in loyal love and faithfulness. So I just wanted to review just briefly some of those words. So compassionate. So here we go. Here's the Hebrew. I'm going to try. Rachum is compassionate. And that's derived from the word meaning womb. So we learned about a deeper way of what a deeper meaning for compassion, right? That tenderness, right? And gracious, chanun, grace, favor, generosity. Slow to anger, erek apayim, long of nose. I loved that one. That was one of my favorites, long of nose, which is long suffering, right? So that's what that meant. And then loyal love is chesed, or covenantal, promise-keeping love. And then faithfulness today, emet, truth or trustworthy. So it's been really interesting, I think, giving me a richer and deeper understanding that those words have a lot more behind them than we see on the surface, and they can be translated in so many different ways. So there's just a richness and a depth to the character of God, and I think it's really helped me see how good God is. When you look at those words and see that the fullness or the depth of that, how good God is, and all that He does to pursue me and to love me and to care for me is just mind-blowing. And I'm going to read some lyrics here. It's a great song about God's goodness, and I've shared it on Facebook before, and I'm going to include the link on Facebook, and we'll send the link to our email contacts as well. The song is called The Goodness of God, and I really want you to listen to these words, because all of these words, everything we've been studying really speaks to the goodness of God. I love you, Lord, for your mercy never fails me. All my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire. In the darkest night, you are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. And all my life, you have been faithful. All my life, you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything, because your goodness is running after me.
Well, all I can say is amen. And that happens to be connected to emet, which is the root word for it. So amin is the word, and it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's you can count on it. And so I hope this has been a wonderful opportunity for you just to stretch yourself a little bit, grow. It's been a lot of fun for us. We've grown and learned just by doing this. And if you have any further questions, just give a shout out to us, contact us. We'd love to hear from you. And in the meantime, learn more about the character of God through the summer and trust that He is faithful.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us for these Fireside Chats. Have a great summer. We'll see you in the fall.
Good night and have a wonderful summer.
Good night.